I want you to cast your mind back for it. Like, really try to put yourself back in the shoes 7 or so.
That's a age ago.
I know, right? But just picture it. You're walking down this harsh, fluorescent lit aisle of a toy store. Or maybe you're just standing there shifting your weight at the checkout counter of a grocery store while your parents load groceries onto the belt.
Yeah, totally. Just dying of boredom.
Exactly. And right there, nestled in this cheap cardboard display box, those little brightly colored, incredibly strange plastic eggs.
Oh my gosh, the ones with the weird texture?
Yes, the ones with that weird, slightly textured, sort of mottled shell. You know exactly the ones I'm talking about. You'd beg for $1, you buy one, pop open that plastic shell.
And it was never just a normal toy inside.
No. Inside wasn't a piece of candy or like a neat little puzzle. Inside was this strange, viscous, cold, gooey jelly sack.
Just absolute sludge.
Just completely unnecessary alien slime. And buried in the center of that sludge was a little plastic, spiky plasma dragon.
I mean, looking back, it was a deeply tactile, completely bizarre marketing, but it somehow worked perfectly.
It really did. You had to physically excavate the toy from this primordial ooze before you could even play with it.
It was messy, it was kind of gross, and it was just utterly, completely captivating for a kid.
Oh, I was obsessed. I remember collecting those things, lining them up on my bedroom shelf. I was totally enraptured by these tiny mythical creatures that had basically just been born out of alien sludge on my carpet.
Right, and ruining the carpet in the process, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. My mom was thrilled. But, looking back on it now, the sheer ubiquity of those toys points to something much bigger.
It really does. It's a massive cultural phenomenon.
Because human history has invented thousands of monsters. If you look at mythologies from around the world, we have kelpies, griffins, harpies, chimeras, manticores, fairies, unicorns. I mean, the list goes on and on forever.
Yeah, the variety is staggering.
But if you look at our book, our video games, our movies, our collective pop culture, one creature has entirely devoured the ecosystem.
The dragon.
Out of all the mythical beasts we could obsess over, why are we universally, relentlessly obsessed?
Well, the dragon just operates on a completely different tier of the human imagination.
Right.
And the answer isn't just that they have an excellent visual design. I mean, yes, a massive fire-breathing reptile with bat wings is objectively striking.
It's a great look. You can't deny that.
You really can't.
Yeah.
But the dominance of the dragon is the result of this highly complex synthesis. It sits at the exact intersection of our deep-seated evolutionary biology, our constantly shifting psychological relationship with the natural world, and this profound, almost desperate human need for untamed.
I love looking at it that way. If the fantasy genre is this massive, sprawling ecosystem, the dragon is essentially the undisputed apex predator of our collective imagination.
Without a doubt.
All the other creatures, your goblins, your sprites, even your giants, they're all just kind of grazing at the bottom of the food chain, while the dragon sits at the very top, casting a shadow.
Yeah, they really do monopolize the fantasy.
So today, our mission for this deep dive is to figure out exactly why. We are unpacking an incredibly fascinating YouTube transcript from the channel Hello Future.
It's a brilliant piece of media analysis.
It really is. The video is titled Why Fantasy is Obsessed with Drag, and we're going to pull from historical cartography, biological evolutionary theories, and the psychology of fantasy to really get to the bottom of obsession.
Which is a huge undertaking, but so fun.
Total. Let's start with the psychological void that dragons fill for us, especially when we are young. Because to understand why we want dragons, you kind of have to understand what we are trying to escape.
Right. Think about what the world looks like to a child when that initial gloss wears off.
Yeah.
You reach an age maybe 9 or 10 years old where you suddenly realize the rigid boundaries of reality.
The moment you realize Hogwarts isn't sending a letter.
Exactly. The world reveals itself to be this deeply systemic, often mundane place. It is restricted to the logic of Excel spreadsheets, going to church on Sunday, sitting in a classroom under fluorescent lights.
Doing repetitive math homework.
Yeah, doing endless math homework and following all these rules that seem entirely divorced from any grand sense of adventure or meaning.
It's the realization that magic isn't real. And honestly, worse, that the real world is incredibly bureaucratic.
It's deeply bureaucratic.
And it lacks clear rights and wrongs. The real world is messy and complicated and, often incredibly boring. For a lot of kids and honestly for a lot of adults, this realization is genuinely upsetting.
It is. It's not just a fleeting thought. It becomes this deep foundational frustration.
Yeah, you feel like you've been born into the wrong era. Or the wrong universe entirely. A world with no uncharted islands, no ancient magic, and definitely no dragons.
Which brings us directly to the core psychological offering of the dragon. It offers a romantic vision of the world.
Okay, let's unpack that.
And We need to define romantic carefully. We aren't talking about, a rom-com or a love story.
Right, not a candlelit dinner with a reptile.
Exactly.
Right.
We are talking about romanticism in the literary and historical. As a movement, Romanticism was a massive reaction against the scientific rationality of the Enlightenment and the mechanization of the Industrial Revolution.
There's a pushback against the spreadsheets.
Exactly. It emphasized intense emotion, individualism, and crucially, the raw, untamed power of. So a world that contains dragon is fundamentally a world where humanity is not the absolute master.
That is a massive distinction for you to keep in mind as we talk about humans aren't in charge. It leaves room for Think about our modern world. We have paved over the forest, control the flow of rivers with massive concrete dams. We've basically conquered the dark. We are the undisputed mass environment.
Right. There's very little left that truly threatens us on a species level.
But if you drop a dragon into a world, suddenly humans are no longer at the top of the food chain.
Not even close.
Right. A dragon represents a wildness that literally cannot be paved over, domesticated, or put into an Excel spreadsheet. It demands a world that is bigger than human ambition. And that leads directly into one of the most powerful, enduring tropes in all of fantasy.
The Dragon Rider.
Yes, the Dragon Rider.
The Dragon Rider trope is basically a masterpiece of psychological fulfillment. Just consider the massive success of books like Aragon and Eldon.
Oh, man, Aragon.
Right. The central narrative hook there isn't just about obtaining magical power. It's the idea of being a random nobody. You're just a farm boy living in the middle of nowhere, completely disenfranchised from the powers of the world, and you chance across a dragon egg in the wilderness.
I know so many people who had absolute tattered, dog-eared, spine-broken paperback copies.
Oh, I had one?
Me too.
Yeah.
Because it's the ultimate chosen one narrative, but elevated to something much more visceral. You aren't just whisked away to a boarding school to learn how to wave a wand.
Right, it's not academic.
No, you are whisked away by a magnificent, terrifying beast to do something that actually matters. In a world where you feel like you're just doing homework and your choices have zero impact on the universe, the dragon becomes a vehicle for profound...
It allows you to suddenly matter in a world that matters.
Yeah.
And the key is that you aren't just a passenger. The dream is to be whisked away from the mundane, yes. But being a dragon rider means you maintain agency. You have a say in the destination.
That point.
If we look at the insights of Cressida Cowell, she's the author of the How to Train Your Dragon book. She points out something vital about this dynamic in the source material.
What does she say?
She notes that when you write about dragons, you're instantly tapping into millennia of cultural history regarding the human relationship with the wild. She says that dragon riding represents our desire to control the wild, but it also acknowledges our doomed attempts to actually do so.
Oh, wow. That is exactly the shift we've seen in modern fantasy. Older stories, like old mythology, might have been about slaying the beast or breaking it to our will, kind of like breaking a wild horse.
Right, St. George and the Dragon. Very adversarial.
Exactly. But modern stories lean so heavily into the idea of the bonded dragon. It's way less about dominance and more about finding a partner.
And to understand the emotional weight of that partnership, we really have to look at the psychological difference between facing a creature like a kraken versus facing a dragon. Because a kraken is horrifying. It is a massive tentacled leviathan that will drag your ship to the crushing depths of the ocean.
Absolute nightmare.
It is. But a kraken is essentially just an object. It operates like a force of nature, a hurricane, an earthquake, a whirlpool.
You don't reason with a kraken.
Exactly. You don't negotiate with a hurricane. You just endure it or you die trying.
But a dragon at its absolute peak is entirely... The best way to describe a true dragon, and I love this framing from the source, is as a monarch.
Yes, a monarch of nature.
It isn't just a beast. It is an entity that possesses immense agency, terrifying intelligence, and profound pride. It is a genuine rival to humanity.
That's the difference.
Right. A dragon can be overthrown, it can be bargained with, or, crucially, it can be bonded. It occupies a much higher tier of mythical existence than just a big, dumb monster thrashing around in the water.
So when a society yearns for that specific dragon rider bond today, it is directly imitating our deep modern craving for genuine connection.
Especially today.
Especially today. In an era of very shallow digital interaction, we are chasing this idealized concept of finding an entity that will completely and utterly know our hearts and our souls.
Right.
It's a closeness that completely transcends ordinary, fraught human relationship. The dragon rider bond is telepathic, it is empathetic, and it is absolute.
Okay, I hear that, but I want to push back on this idea for a second.
Go for it.
We say we want this romantic, untamed world where humans aren't the master, right? A world where nature is wild and dangerous.
Right.
But isn't the fantasy of taming and riding a dragon just a sneaky backdoor way for humans to assert dominance anyway?
How do you mean?
Well, We take the ultimate apex symbol of the untamed wild, the literal monarch of nature, and we slap a leather saddle on its back. Isn't that inherently contradictory? Aren't we just conquering nature but dressing it up as a friend?
That is a really perceptive observation.
Yeah.
And honestly, it cuts right to the heart of the human paradox regarding nature.
So it is contradictory.
Yes, it is a contradiction,
Yeah.
but it's a necessary one for our psychology. We are terrified of the true wild, yet we're desperately drawn to its majesty. We want the thrill of the untamed, but we definitely want to survive it.
We want to visit the wild but have a safe ride home.
Precise. The brilliance of the bonded dragon narrative is that by bonding with the dragon, the human character does not destroy the wilds they are absorbed into it.
Oh, that's
The fantasy isn't about crushing nature beneath our heel. It is about being deemed worthy by nature. When the dragon chooses you, it is a validation from the wild itself. You aren't a conqueror. You are an ambassador.
that completely flips it. So it's not breaking the dragon's spirit to serve you. It's the dragon recognizing your spirit as an equal.
Exactly.
The untamed wild looks at you and says, yes, you belong. That makes a lot of sense. But if dragons represent this untamed, unexplored wild, what happens to them when human exploration physically maps the entire...
That is the big question.
Because that is a major historical shift we have to transition from the psychological need for the wild to the literal geographic reality.
We essentially move from the emotional landscape to the cartographic one. For centuries, the ultimate symbol of this geographic unknown was the famous phrase, "Here be dragons."
Or in the original Latin, hic sunt dracon. Just hearing that phrase gives you a shiver, doesn't it? If you close your eyes, you can picture this weathered parchment map rolled up on a ship's deck, and right at the frayed edges where the ink stops, there's that warning, "Here be dragons."
It's extremely evocative.
It evokes that feeling of standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out into a thick fog, knowing that something massive is moving out there. But there's actually a really interesting historical asterisk attached phrase. It's a bit of an anachronism.
It is. Culturally, we tend to associate "Here be dragons" with ancient, perhaps Roman cartography as this widespread standard for marking the unknown.
Like every map had it.
Right. But in reality, the Latin phrase "hic sunt dracones" only appears on one or two artifacts from the early 1500s.
Really? Just a couple.
Just a couple. Most notably the Hunt Lennox globe, which is this fascinating tiny copper globe from around 1510, and a related ostrich egg globe. It wasn't some ubiquitous Roman mapping standard at all.
That's wild.
However, the reason the phrase has rooted itself so stubbornly in our cultural consciousness is because it perfectly encapsulates the mystery of the vast, untamed wilderness at the fuzzy edges of human knowledge.
Right. Because before we had satellites, before we had GPS, the edge of the map wasn't just empty space. It was a place of infinite possibility and infinite danger.
Absolutely.
If you were a sailor in the 1400s, sailing past the known trade routes, you weren't just risking getting lost. You literally felt you were risking sailing off the edge of reality itself into the jaws of leviathans.
And we see this exact trope constantly replicated in modern fantasy media to recreate that exact feeling of dread and wonder.
Yes, absolutely. You can look at the Withered Heath from J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit.
A classic example.
It is described so vaguely, almost ominously, as the place in the far north from whence the great worm. It is the ultimate edge of the map.
And you see it in sci-fi and modern fantasy too. In Katazi's The Stardust Grail, the dragons are quite literally pushed to the extreme edge of the known universe.
Right, because the Earth isn't big enough anymore.
Exact. And in Jindu's Schrodinger's Catastrophe, they are placed exactly at, quote, the end of the map.
Because that edge is the only place where our imagination is allowed to run completely feral. Dragon stories harken back to a time when it felt like anything was possible, when there was enough unmapped, unknown space on the physical Earth that a giant, fire-breathing reptile could have genuinely been real just over the next horizon.
But as the centuries rolled on, as the maps got filled in, that physical space vanished. The world shrank.
There is an incredibly poignant cinematic analogy for this loss of the unknown found, surprisingly, in the movie Pirates of the Caribbean at World End.
Honestly, it's a scene that perfectly distills this exact cultural shift.
It really does. Captain Jack Sparrow is walking along this desolate black sand beach, and he comes across the washed-up, dead carcass of the Kraken.
It's such a striking visual.
This is the exact same horrifying, unstoppable beast that dragged him to his death in the previous movie. You would think he'd be thrilled it's dead.
You really would.
Yet Jack is visibly sad. He's actually mourning it. Seeing this mythical force of nature reduce to a rotting pile of flesh on the sand without even the dignity of dying in an epic battle is just tragic.
It is a remarkably melancholic scene for a blockbuster Disney action.
Right.
Captain Barbossa walks up, looks at the dead monster, and says, "The world used to be a bigger place." And Jack Sparrow, looking at this dead symbol of the mythological ocean, replies, "Nah, the world's the same. There's just less in it."
There's just less in it. That line hits incredibly hard.
It perfectly encapsulates the tragedy of the shrinking map, because the story of Pirates of the Caribbean is set precisely during the Age of Discovery and the rise of massive trading conglomerates like the East India Trading Company.
Spreadsheets are taking over.
The blank edges of the map are being aggressively filled in by commerce and naval. And in a world that is fully known, mapped, categorized, and monetized, monsters simply don't have a place to hide anymore.
The world isn't allowed to be wild and magical and free. The era of myth is dying, replaced by the era of the spreadsheet.
I was trying to visualize this phenomenon while we were prepping, and I realized that human imagination behaves exactly like a gas.
Like a gas.
Yeah, think about the physics of a gas.
Yeah.
It will naturally and automatically expand to fill whatever container you put it in. For the vast majority of human history, the container was the entire massive, unexplored surface of the Earth.
Okay, I see where you're going.
We had massive room for our imagination to spread out and invent thousands of creatures across every continent. But today, we have Google Earth.
Yeah, you can zoom in anywhere.
We have crystal clear satellite imaging that can zoom in on the deepest, most inaccessible rainforests on the planet. The container of the unexplored Earth has shrunk almost nothing. I mean, even places that feel remote to us now, like New Zealand, which was the last major habitable landmass to be settled that was discovered and mapped by the Maori nearly 1,000.
That is a highly effective analogy. The gas of human imagination is basically being severely compressed by the weight of modern cartography.
Exactly.
So the crucial question becomes, where do the fringes of human imagination live now? If the surface of the Earth is entirely mapped and categorized, our Here Be Dragons locations have been forcefully pushed off the continents entirely.
Right.
They've been banished to the absolute extremes of our physical reality.
The absolute crushing margins. It makes perfect sense why so many modern conspiracy theories, cryptid sightings, and sci-fi horror stories are rooted in the deep ocean and the ice sheets of Antarctica.
Those are the only places left.
Those are realistically the last two places on our own planet where we can point to a map and genuinely say, Hicks sent Dracones.
Precisely. Fiction adapts to the boundaries of knowledge.
Right.
Look at H.P. Lovecraft's 1931 novella, At the Mountains of Madness.
Oh, classic.
He didn't hide his elder gods in a forest in Europe. He hid an entire alien city and the cosmic horror of Cthulhu deep beneath the impenetrable Antarctic ice.
Because that was the edge of the map for him.
Exactly. Or, looking at more modern media, consider the ending of the How to Train Your Dragon film series. Where do the dragons go when they realize they can no longer coexist with an expanding humanity?
Oh, right. They don't just fly to another island.
No, they fly down a massive, geologically impossible sinkhole in the distant Arctic Ocean, completely retreating to a hidden world at the impenetrable center of.
Our imagination basically has to forcefully shove its way underground, plunge deep underwater, or launch itself into outer space just to have enough room to breathe.
It's the gas expanding to the margins.
Yes, but creators actually found another, entirely different way to deal with this shrinking map. Because the blank edges disappeared, authors and filmmakers couldn't just rely on hiding dragons in the geographical fog anymore.
Right, you can't just put them over the horizon.
Instead, they adapted by making dragons scientifically plausible so they could fit inside the harsh light of our known world.
This represents a massive, fascinating cultural shift in the fantasy genre. We move from relying on geographical mystery to relying on biological plausibility.
If we cannot hide the monster in the unknown, we have to meticulously explain how it could exist in the known.
Exactly. We stop asking, where is it hiding? And start asking, how does it work?
Yeah.
Think about the way the How to Train Your Dragon franchise approached creature design. They didn't just draw cool, spiky monsters and say it's magic. They took a deeply evolutionary approach to the dragons.
They treated them like animals shaped by Darwinian natural selection. They really thought about environment.
The biological logic applied there is brilliant speculative biology. They designed dragons with vibrant plumage, specifically adapted to blend into dense, colorful jungle canopies.
Makes total sense.
They created dragons with the flat, aerodynamic builds of marine stingrays so they could seamlessly glide through aquatic environments. They designed dragons that lacked traditional sight but evolved complex echolocation because they lived exclusively in pitch-black, subterranean caves.
It grounds the fantasy in a reality we understand. And it wasn't just movies doing this. Do you remember the Dragonology board game and book series from the early 2000s?
Oh, vividly. The faux leather covers, the embedded gem, the meticulous illustrations.
Yes. Oh, man, I love that book. The whole premise of that phenomenon was to treat dragons as a lost branch of natural science.
Right. It was presented as nonfiction.
You were given taxonomies, you learned about the Scandinavian frost dragon, the Irish cockatrice, and my personal favorite, the Australian marsupial dragon.
The marsupial dragon is brilliant.
Which is just a hilarious, awesome concept, imagining a dragon with a pouch for its young hopping around the outback. They even assign them binomial nomenclature, giving them Latin names like Americanus tex or Draco occidental.
And by giving them Latin classifications and anatomical diagrams, you essentially perform a psychological trick on the audience's brain. You take the creature out of the dusty realm of fairy tales and place it firmly in the sterile, authoritative realm of a natural history museum.
You are using the language of science to validate the magic.
Precise. And perhaps the most mind-blowing execution of this concept is from the 2002 film Reign of Fire.
Oh man, I remember watching this and just having my mind blown by the explanation for how the dragons breathe fire.
It's so good.
Because in that movie, it has absolutely nothing to do with magic spells or some mystical core. The movie painstakingly explains that the dragons have separate, highly specialized chemical glands located in the back of their...
It is a stunning piece of grounded, real-world biology applied to a myth. The dragons in Reign of Fire secrete two distinct volatile chemicals. Separately, they're completely inert.
Right.
But when the dragon exhales, those chemicals are sprayed out and mixed in the air, creating a violent exothermic reaction that combusts into flames.
Just like napalm.
Exactly. And what makes this so brilliant is that it isn't pure fiction. We have creatures on Earth right now that utilize this exact chemical warfare mechanism.
The bombardier beetle.
Yes, the bombardier beetle stores two chemicals, hydroquinone and hydrogen peroxide, in separate reservoirs in its abdomen.
That's just wild.
When threatened, it contracts its muscles, forcing the chemicals into a mixing chamber where enzymes break down the hydrogen peroxide, releasing oxygen gas. This oxidation of the hydroquinone generates intense heat, bringing the mixture to nearly 100 degrees Celsius.
The boiling point of water.
Exactly. The pressure from the gas forces this boiling, caustic, toxic liquid out of a rotatable nozzle at the end of its abdomen with a loud popping sound. It is literally firing a boiling chemical cannon at its predator.
That is insane. A tiny beetle is out there doing complex chemistry to shoot boiling liquid. So by applying that exact proven biological reality to a dragon, breathing fire suddenly doesn't seem so impossible.
Not at all.
It feels incredibly scientifically plausible. Breathing fire isn't a myth, it's just a highly advanced evolutionary defense mech. There are even books like the Dragon Slayer Codex that are entirely dedicated to exploring how dragons evolved to fill specific ecological niches, basically treating them like any other animal in the food web.
Right.
And what's wild is that this search for scientific plausibility actually connects direct, very real history to all of it.
It really does.
Yeah.
Imagine being an early archaeologist or even just a farmer in the 12th century digging a well. You're digging in the dirt and suddenly your shovel hits something hard.
Okay, picture.
You unearth a massive, terrifying, fossilized skull the size of a horse, but it's lined with rows of jagged, serrated reptilian teeth. This is centuries before Charles Darwin, before we understood deep geological time, before the word dinosaur was even invented.
You have no context.
Exactly. What else are you going to think you just found?
You're going to think you found a dragon. It's entirely natural to try and fit those inexplicable bones into the mythologies you already know.
Yeah, we saw big lizards like crocodiles, so we logically assumed there were bigger ones out there.
And the funny thing is, we were absolutely right. And then paleontology delivers the ultimate modern plot twist. We discover that many dinosaurs were actually covered in fat.
Which throws a massive wrench into our traditional reptilian image of the past, but strangely aligns beautifully with many depictions of dragons.
Exactly. If you tell me a T-Rex, this 40-foot-long apex predator with teeth the size of bananas, actually had feathers like a giant murder bird, honestly, we don't know for sure that a dinosaur didn't breathe fire at one point.
Well, soft tissue doesn't fossilize well.
Exactly. Who's to say a chemical gland didn't fail to fossilize? It places dragons so firmly in the realm of genuine possibility.
Yeah.
I mean, fundamentally, what is a T-Rex if not a flightless, earthbound dragon?
This biological grounding brings us to a profound point about evolutionary psychology, too.
Oh, this is fascinating.
Why are we so deeply hardwired across almost all human cultures to fear and revere these specific reptilian forms? Some evolutionary biologists and psychologists take a deeply scientific approach, arguing that our visceral reaction to dragons is rooted in our mammalian ancestry.
Right. The dragon is essentially a distant genetic echo of our traumas. Think about it. Millions of years ago, long before humans existed, our tiny, furry, shrew-like mammalian ancestors were the ultimate prey.
Just scurrying around.
And the world they scurried around in was ruled by massive, terrifying reptiles?
We descend from a long, unbroken line of creatures that spent millions of years of their evolutionary history hiding in the shadows, absolutely terrified of giant, scaly, sharp-toothed predators.
Yeah.
The dragon serves as a cultural, almost genetic memory of that ancient, brutal era. It is the ultimate amalgamation of humanity's most primal, hard-coded fears. Massive predatory reptiles, the lethal danger of venom and fangs, and the chaotic, destructive force of untamed fire.
It's the ultimate megafauna. Megafauna, these giant animals just inherently demand our awe simply by existing.
You can't ignore them.
No. You stand next to the skeleton of a blue whale, or you imagine a woolly mammoth, a giant elk, or a saber-toothed tiger, and it inspires a very specific feeling of smallness and wonder in the human brain.
It really humbles you.
A dragon fits perfectly into that category, but dialed up to 11. There is this amazing, deeply evocative quote from an actual Polish encyclopedia published in 1745. The entire entry for the dragon just reads, "It is difficult to defeat a dragon, but you must try."
That sentence is brilliant in its starkness. But you must try.
It's so poetic.
It speaks to the dragon as the ultimate, inescapable test of human capability and heroism. You would be hard-pressed to invent a creature whose slaying would represent a greater feat of courage. It is the apex mountain that humanity must climb to prove it deserves to survive.
But this brings me back to a question about the magic of it all.
Yeah, Peter.
If we spend all this time and energy making a dragon scientifically plausible, if we give it hydroquinone chemical glands, evolutionary lineage charts, and Latin binomial names, does that actually strip away its magic?
What do you mean?
Like, are we just turning a magnificent myth into a boring textbook entry? Or does it make the magic feel more potent because it's suddenly within arm's reach of reality?
I would strongly argue that it makes the magic far more potent.
Yeah.
Because when a creature is purely inexplicably magical, it remains safely quarantined behind the glass of fiction. You know it's not real, so you can observe it safely.
Right.
But when you give it biological plausibility, when you carefully explain the chemistry and the physics, you crack that glass. It creates this feeling of the almost real.
Oh,
It allows us to harbor that tiny, thrilling, irrational suspicion that maybe, just maybe, they were out there. Or at the very least, it forces us to acknowledge that the natural laws of our universe are fully capable of producing something
that almost real feeling is so incredibly intoxicating. It's what keeps us coming back. And here's the other reason we keep coming back.
Yeah.
Dragons aren't just biologically adaptable to fit into scientific rules. They are incredibly, uniquely, narratively adaptable, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Which leads us to the idea of the dragon as the ultimate narrative chameleon in fiction.
For the authors who write them and the world builders who design them, dragons are the ultimate narrative tool. They can survive, thrive, and feel completely authentic in absolutely any pop culture ecosystem you drop them into.
One of the authors consulted on this topic in the source material, Mark Allure, offered a thought that perfectly captured.
What did he say?
He said, "A dragon's most impressive power is not that of flight, flaming breath, or even that the roots of their tails are sunk so to our mythology. A dragon's most impressive power,
Flexibility. That's a great word.
Yeah. They outlast human empires and real-world religions because they can fit neatly into literally any kind of tail."
The sheer variety of dragons we consume in modern media is staggering, and it proves Lawrence's point perfectly. You can have dragons acting as primordial gods, operating on a level of cosmic, incomprehensible power.
Oh, like Alduin.
Exactly. Look at Alduin from the video game Skyrim. Alduin isn't just a big lizard. He is an offshoot of Akatosh, the dragon god of time.
He's a literal deity.
Yeah. Alduin represents the literal end of all things. His purpose is to devour time itself and reset the universe. Then you have Aurelian Sol from League of Legends, who is an ancient celestial cosmic power that literally forges stars.
Wow.
Or the ancient dragons in games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, who exist as primordial forces of nature, completely untouched by and indifferent to human morality. Or even the dragons in Jim Butcher's Dresden Files, who possess power so vast they can literally move continents and change the seasons just by existing.
They operate on the level of deities.
Completely.
But then you scale it down, and you have dragons as destructive forces. These are the dragons that act like medieval tactical nukes.
Right. The weapons.
The dragons in Game of Thrones, they are weapons of mass destruction that shift the entire geopolitical balance of power. Or the mythological Tiamat. And of course, the granddaddy of them all, Smaug from The Hobbit.
Smaug is like...
Smaug's boast to Bilbo is iconic for, he says, "My armor is like tenfold shields, my teeth are swords, my claws spears, the shock of my tail a thunderbolt, my wings a hurricane, and my breath death."
Chill every time.
Right. What is more terrifyingly powerful than a creature born with organic armor, armed with the destructive power of a volcano and a hurricane?
But then you can completely flip the script. You can take all of that terrifying power, invert it, and dragons can be beloved companions. They can actually be cute.
Yes. Look at Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. They literally designed his behavior and facial expressions by studying cats, dogs, and horses.
He's adorable.
He acts like an overgrown, silly, fiercely loyal golden retriever mixed with a very sassy black cat. Or Spyro the Dragon from the classic PlayStation game, spunky, purple little guy with an attitude.
And you also have dragons utilized as complex, tragic, or noble figures. Consider Naomi Novik's Temeraire series, which reimagines the Napoleonic Wars, but with an aerial core of dragons.
I love that series.
Those books deal with deep, sad stories of species extinction, human carelessness, and these immensely dangerous yet highly intelligent, deeply loyal creatures trying to navigate the horrors of human wars.
So why is this immense flexibility entirely dragon? Like, why can't we do this with a griffin?
That's a good question.
Why isn't there a cosmic god griffin, a nuclear griffin, and a cute companion griffin dominating pop?
Well, the biological psychological analysis here is quite straightforward. A griffin is a composite creature, half eagle, half lion. It is a chimera of two known animals. And fundamentally, humans aren't instinctively terrified of eagles or lions in the same primal existential way we fear a massive reptile.
Right, we don't have that million-year genetic trauma about eagles.
Exactly. A traditional chimera, like a weird mishmash of goat, lion, and snake, might be visually strange, but it doesn't inspire awe. It feels like a state of nature.
Like someone glued spare parts together.
Right, but a dragon, it taps into something older. It can be a symbol of human greed hoarding gold, an ancient guardian of a sacred space, a literal representation of death, or a cute cat-like companion. And yet, no matter what role it plays, it always retains its essential dragon.
It's like the literary equivalent of a stem cell.
Oh, I like that.
Think about how a biological stem cell works. It is an undifferentiated cell that can morph into whatever structural tissue the body needs, whether that's muscle, bone, or brain.
Okay.
A dragon is a narrative stem cell. The author can take this core concept of a dragon and morph it into whatever structural narrative tissue the story requires. A villain, a god, a pet, a weapon of mass destruction, a tragic hero, and the audience never ever rejects the trans.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
As long as the creature is vaguely lizardish, possesses some level of intelligence, and is associated with elemental powers like fire or light, we accept it complete. It even raises the hilarious, heavily debated nerd culture question. Is a Balrog from Lord of the Rings a dragon?
Oh boy, that's a dangerous topic to bring up online.
I know, right? But honestly, if you put wings on a giant creature of shadow and flame, most people would just casually say, yeah, that's a dragon.
It speaks to how deeply entrenched the archetype is in our... We don't require a rigid taxonomic definition. We recognize the feeling of a dragon far more than the specific biology of it. When a creature evokes that specific cocktail of awe, terror, and majesty, our brains automatically categorize it as a dragon.
Which brings us beautifully full circle to the final and I think most emotionally resonant part of our deep dive.
Re-enchanting the real world.
Yes. This whole journey started with the perspective of a kid who was frustrated, basically hating the real world because it was full of boring spreadsheets, restrictive rules, and completely lacked dragons.
We've all been there.
But as you grow up, if you keep your eyes open, profound shift about re-enchanting.
It is a remarkable and necessary conclusion to the source material's argument. You realize that you didn't outgrow fantasy. Rather, reading fantasy trained you to properly see the magic that already exists in reality.
Exactly.
You realize that the real world is entirely composed of its own bizarre, breathtaking magic. It just requires a different, more attentive kind of lens.
And the list of real-world wonders that prove this point rivals absolutely anything you would find in a 1,000-page fantasy epic. We need to actually dive in because the physics and biology of our own planet are mind. First, let's look at the mantis.
The mantis shrimp. It is a creature that literally sounds like it was invented by a comic book writer.
It really does.
Its primary weapon is a specialized appendage called a dactyl. It punches its prey with the speed of a .22 caliber bullet.
That is absurd.
The physical mechanics of its punch are so fast, reaching speeds of 50 miles per hour underwater, that it literally boils the water around it through a process called cavitation.
Cavitation is incredible. Because the club moves so fast, it creates an area of extremely low pressure behind, essentially tearing the water apart and creating a vapor bubble.
Right.
And when that vacuum bubble collapses, it generates a shockwave.
Exactly. The collapse of the cavitation bubble generates temperatures of several thousand degrees Celsius, which is nearly as hot as the surface of the sun.
Wait, underwater?
Yes, and it emits a literal flash of light, a phenomenon known as sonoluminescence.
It punches so hard it makes...
And if that isn't magical enough, the mantis shrimp's eyes have 16 types of color-receptive cone compared to a human's 3. They see a spectrum of colors, including ultraviolet and circularly polarized light, that our human brains cannot even physically comprehend.
It has literal superpowers superpower. Then there's the Charavipteric. This is a bizarre gliding reptile from the Triassic period, roughly 225 million years ago.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
We only know it existed from a single miraculous fossil discovered in Central Asia. It had membranes of skin stretching between its incredibly long hind legs and its tail, allowing it to glide through the ancient forests.
It was basically a real-life tiny dragon jumping from tree to tree long before birds even.
And if we look back to the real Here Be Dragons territory, we find phenomena that look like pure CGI. We have massive bioluminescent blooms of jellyfish, hordes of glowing phytoplankton called dinoflagellata that wash up on shores, reacting to the physical stress of the crashing waves by emitting an ethereal neon blue glow.
Yeah.
When you walk through it, your footprints literally glow in the dark. It looks exactly like real, tangible magic.
Or what about the siphon?
Oh my gosh, these things are nightmare best way possible.
They really are. A siphonophore looks like a single massive jelly, but it's actually a colonial organ. It's made up of thousands of individual, highly specialized zooids that share a single nerve net and cannot survive on their own. Some are specialized for swimming, some for digesting, and some for hunting. And their stinging tentacles can reach up to 45 meters long.
45 meters?
Yes. That is the length of half a football field, just drifting silently in the pitch-black deep ocean, waiting for prey to brush.
We also share this planet with extreme survivors like tardigrades, also known as water bears.
The indestructible water bears.
These microscopic creatures can enter a state of cryptobiosis, expelling almost all the water in their bodies and replacing it with a sugar that prevents their cells from rupturing. In this state, they can survive being boiled in water, survive being exposed to temperatures as low as -Celsius, and they can withstand mass.
They have even survived being exposed to the hard vacuum of outer space.
It's just wild. And we cannot forget the platypus, a creature so bizarre, combining mammalian fur, a duck's bill that detects electrodes, and venomous spurs on its hind leg, that when early scientists first shipped a pelt back to Europe, the academic community genuinely thought it was a hoax pieced together by a clever taxidermist.
We literally have animals that sound like chimeras.
We do, and then you pan out from the Earth and look at the cosmos. We have auroras lighting up the skies near the pole, created by solar winds slamming into our planet's magnetic field and ionizing gases.
It's beautiful.
We have black holes, regions of space-time where gravity is so strong that not even light can escape, warping the very fabric of reality. We have the missing dark energy of the universe, and we have the simple, staggering statistical probability that somewhere out in the infinite dark, there are alien civilizations looking up at their own skies, dreaming of finding us, just as we dream of finding them.
Which leads to a truly profound realization. Understanding the mechanics of the world doesn't strip it of wonder. It actually reveals mysteries you didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
Knowing the atomic, magnetic, and biological processes of how an aurora works doesn't make it less beautiful. It makes it infinitely more majestic. You realize you are standing on a rock, hurtling through a void, shielded by an invisible magnetic force field.
There's a brilliant quote from the writer G.K. Chesterton that perfectly summarizes. He says, "The world will never starve for the want of wonders. Only the want of wonder."
It's a vital distinction. The fantasy genre doesn't exist to make us hate our reality or to foster bitter escapism.
Right.
It exists to exercise our capacity for wonder, like a muscle. It trains us so that when we return to the real world, we can look at the cavitation bubble of a mantis shrimp or the glowing waves of bioluminescent plankton and feel the exact same awe and reverence we feel when reading about smog descending on a mountain. Fantasy explores our interactions with ourselves, the environment around us, and the boundary of the plausible but not real.
But, and I think this is crucial, we have to acknowledge the incredible juxtaposition of this reality. Because as much as we have this soaring, majestic realization about black holes, dark energy, and indestructible tardigrades, the real world is also relentlessly, frustratingly mundane.
Yeah, the majestic universe frequently collides with the bureaucracy of human existence.
Exactly. Imagine having your mind completely expanded by the cosmic wonder of the universe, and then abruptly you have to go to the dentist.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're 30 years old, your jaw hurts, and the x-rays show your wisdom teeth are impacted and need to be surgically extracted. But you live in a society where there is no public dental cover, because in an incredible display of bureaucratic absurdity, teeth are apparently not legally considered part of the human body for insurance purposes.
It is the ultimate crushing real-world spreadsheet problem. It's a massively expensive procedure representing a sudden, devastating 2-month hit to an independent creator's income.
So you have to pivot from contemplating the majesty of a 45-meter deep-sea siphonophore to setting up a Patreon, asking viewers to help you reach 1,000 supporters just so you can afford necessary jaw surgery without going bankrupt.
Yeah, the reality of it is hard.
You're writing brilliant books, like On Writing and World Building, which is so successful it's been translated into Japanese and catalog for the end of humanity, but you still have to battle the Excel spreadsheet of medical.
It's a stark contrast.
It is, and the stark contrast forces me to ask, if the real world is already filled with tardigrades and mantis shrimp that essentially have biological superpower, why do we still need to read about dragons?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why isn't a 45-meter siphonophore enough to satisfy us? Why do we still desperately need to escape if reality is already this magical?
Because, as that crushing dental bill perfectly illustrates, the real world is deeply exhausting. Yes, reality is magical, but it's also filled with impenetrable bureaucracy, sudden medical bills, tedious Excel spreadsheets, and mundane systemic struggles that you simply cannot punch your way out of.
What?
A siphonophore is wondrous to behold, but you cannot ride a siphonophore away from a medical bill.
No, you definitely cannot.
Dragons offer a necessary psychological synthesis. They take the breathtaking awe of the natural world and combine it with the intense agency and narrative satisfaction that our real world often denies. We need dragons because they are the wonders of reality repackaged into a story where the protagonist actually has the power to overcome the systemic obstacles. In a fantasy book, the dragon can burn the spreadsheet.
That makes total sense. We need the scientific wonder, but we also desperately need the narrative victory.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this massive deep dive, let's synthesize the journey we've been on together. We started with that romantic childhood yearning, popping open a sticky plastic egg, trying to escape a world of math homework.
Trying to find some magic in the slud.
We traced the frayed edges of 16th century map, looking for where the monsters hide. We watched the map shrink, forcing us to dissect the biological chemistry of fire just to keep the myth alive.
We moved from geography to biology.
Exactly. We explored how the dragon evolved into the ultimate flexible narrative stem cell, capable of God. And finally, we landed hard back in our own reality, finding that while the mundane world is exhausting, the magic we were looking for in those fantasies.
It is a remarkable evolution of thought, and it perfectly mirrors the evolution of the fantasy genre itself.
Before we go, I want to do a quick rundown to celebrate the incredible depth of this genre, based on some authors' all-time favorite dragons.
Oh, this is a great...
We have Barbara Hambly's Dragon's Bane, known not just for the story, but for that absolutely gorgeous, iconic Michael Whelan cover art. We have Katla, the genuinely terrifying, nightmare-inducing dragon from Astrid Lindgren's brothers Lion. The ancient, wise, talking dragons of Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea. Naomi Novik's brilliant, alternate history dragons in Temerity. The noble Draco, voiced by Sean Connery in the movie Dragonheart. And fantastic original creations from modern authors like Valeris and Barrett. It just shows how deep and diverse this love goes across generations.
It is a profound testament to the enduring power of the symbol. But looking at the entire history of this phenomenon raises a fascinating, perhaps unsettling question about where human imagination goes from here.
Oh.
If dragons are the ultimate manifestation of our primal past, a literal genetic memory of when our tiny mammalian ancestors were prey to giant reptiles on the prehistoric savanna, what mythical creature will humanity invent 1,000 years from now?
Oh man, that is a wild thought experiment.
Think about it. Our daily existential dread is no longer triggered by giant predators with fangs or the untamed destruction of a forest fire.
Right, our threats are different now.
Our modern fears are entirely invisible. They are algorithmic. We are terrified of artificial intelligence, deepfakes, data harvesting, and total digital surveillance. So what will the dragon of the year 3000 look like?
Wow.
Will it still be a creature born of fire, wings, and scales? Or will the apex predator of our future imagination be a monster born entirely of silicon, surveillance, code?
That is an incredible question to leave you with. If the blank map of the world eventually shrinks down to the microscopic size of a silicon microchip, where do the new monsters hide?
Something to think about.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking for the magic hidden in the everyday physics of the world. Keep asking the big questions and always keep seeking out the edges of your own map. Imagine popping open that sticky plastic toy egg again. Who knows what kind of world is waiting to be born from the sludge today?